Welcome. Today, I'm joined by Will Hicklen. We've worked together. He's been someone that I've learned from. He's been a tremendous background in sales and in leadership and really thinking and focusing on growth. So, as we get started here, Will, I'd love if you could just share a bit of an introduction about your background, some of the roles that you've had, and what you're passionate about.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. It's great to see you as always.
Mhm.
So I've done a lot in my career, and there some kind of inflection points in there that have kind of helped me discover what I really enjoy doing and what I probably what my power alley is, what I enjoy doing the most, and what I'm best at. And but the common theme through all of it is I've been in tech, always customer facing, always carrying a number, always interested in helping others perform in their roles. I love leading teams, whether that's as a CGO, which I've done. I've been a founder CEO. I've run global partner organizations and alliances, and I've run direct sales teams and that kind of thing. So I like all aspects of the business that are customer facing that result in revenue for the company. Um, so that's where I enjoy spending most of my time. And like you, I've worked in some really big companies like SAP and so on. But I love small company environments. I just love the dynamics, the fast pace, the quick decision making, the everything feels consequential. It feels like you're making an impact and making a difference in the business. You could turn on a dime. That's fun. When I learned that that's what I enjoyed about myself, and I enjoyed building things, um, both literally and metaphorically in business, right? Uh, I started to really understand what I was best at work and in my career. And that's kind of guided my career a lot, just to my personal thinking and my preferences.
Was there a specific moment where you kind of discovered, I love this building. This is what I want to do? Is there a story behind that?
There's a little bit behind that. So early in my career, I was selling, carrying a bag, and I always liked the customer interactions, but I never felt like what I did was all that important, and I wasn't viewing it the right way, and I struggled with it. So in my early or my mid to late 20s, um, I kind of felt like I had a job for the sake of having a job, and I was competitive. I've always been competitive, and washed up athlete. I can't help but compete, and the way we keep score in this business is we track revenue and income, right?
Mhm.
So, I always did that, and I was always motivated. There was never a problem there, but I never felt like I really stumbled across what I really enjoyed doing. As I started to get involved in more types of roles, more types of opportunities in the companies I worked in, I stumbled into a great job in a startup out in Silicon Valley. I worked for one of the most famous people in Silicon Valley, people know, and got to do a lot. I wore a lot of hats, and the guy challenged me to take on things I had no business taking on,
Mhm.
and I loved it. I found that I loved taking things on that I didn't know and I didn't understand well, had no experience doing, but was happy to take them on, right? And what I discovered from that was not just kind of a temperament and what I enjoyed taking on and challenges, but I was building things, like building things that didn't exist before. And as I got more and more involved in building areas of the business or routes to market or channels or building teams or building a new business that gets launched within a company, that's where I started to realize that what I enjoyed doing was building. And I started to view my career very differently. All of a sudden, I was having fun with it. So my career since then has been very focused on some of those kind of key things that I enjoy doing most.
A lot of your work has you've loved working with startups and really kind of looking at how do we assess growth? How do we think about keeping organizations growing? What are some of the themes that you see, common challenges, opportunities, as organizations are looking at growth?
Particularly in startups, you mean?
Doesn't have to just be in startups. It can be if it's different, if it's the same, that could be interesting as well.
Yeah, most of what I've done the last many years have been with companies that are focused on growth,
Mhm.
and that can be a $5 million company, it could be a $500 million company. It's really more about mentality and what your goals are for the business. So some of the themes that I have seen, regardless of size, is that when companies become so focused on operating the model they've always had, and maybe just getting incrementally a little bit better,
Mhm.
you ask them what their goals are, they tend to not be able to articulate them. They're not clear. They may have sales goals, they may have operating goals, things like that, but they don't have big audacious goals. And without a big audacious goal, you generally don't rally the emotional commitment, the drive, the
Mhm.
stick to itiveness, all these really soft factors that are so important in building success. You don't develop those very well. The companies that um, that lack that, I find it's because they lack that goal. Now, if they have that goal, it's a lot easier to have a conversation with them. But even the ones that have that goal of growing aggressively, and those are the ones that I really enjoy working with, um, they often don't have a good link between the goal setting and how do we actually grow the business to achieve those goals. So many entrepreneurs, owner operators that are founding these companies. So I talk to companies that are 5 million, 50 million, doesn't matter. If they don't have that goal 3 years from now, I want to exit. I want to create an exit. I want to, uh, do this or that, or uh, get the business funded or things like that.
Mhm.
They've got those goals in mind. It's easy to use that as kind of the keel of the business and say, we're doing this entirely for that goal. That's how we're meeting that goal. What I find many companies have done is they they came up with an idea, they built a solution, they took it to market to the first handful of customers they knew. They never really thought about positioning and messaging. Even their
Mhm.
price is not really approached with a discipline. Um, and oftentimes we have to kind of step back and say, let's talk about that goal. Now let's talk about what your real positioning is of the business. What's your messaging? How do you convey that to the market? And then how do you actually monetize that in the market? So there are a few things that they often don't think in those terms, um, and building a discipline around constant customer feedback, closed loop feedback from customers and employees,
Mhm.
um, constantly refining messaging and positioning, all in an effort to achieve that audacious goal. Um, the last piece is I think they often stumbled into a pricing model that they kind of didn't understand. And they thought that's what we need to do in order to win this deal or that deal early on. Well, it worked. Let's repeat it. And they end up repeating that same pricing over and over again. Or they get to a negotiating point with a customer and the customer says, if you can just cut 10% off that number, we're going to do business with you. And they're convinced they've got the right pricing model. And
Mhm.
the reality is they rarely have the right pricing model. They typically don't align pricing as a tool to monetize what that positioning is and who they actually target in the market. So there's usually misalignment there. Those are some of the common themes that we find. Positioning, positioning, messaging, closed loop feedback from customers and employees, and then the actual monetization strategy. Like pricing is part of that.
So if you had one piece of advice that you give towards leaders pursuing growth, what would you share?
Oh gosh, one
You
piece
can
of
give them more.
oh my gosh, I probably could go on about this for an hour. I know you can too. Um, it's really about goals and step back out of the business periodically and look at this and really challenge yourself. Why am I doing this? What's the point? And if it's to make money, that's okay. If it's, I want to achieve a $4 million a year income off the business, that's okay. I want to create $100 million exit in 2 years. That's okay. Whatever it is, don't be ashamed to admit it, embrace it, and build the business around that goal.
Mhm.
Don't pretend that you can't. If you're embarrassed about the goal and you don't want to talk about it, then it's not really your goal, right? So build a plan to get there and make sure everybody else is on board with it too.
Any ways you suggest best helping get everyone on board with it? I mean, they might not be on the board with the idea of you making $4 million, but how do you see it work well when a leader brings everybody else on board towards that big audacious goal?
I'm a big believer that if the owner operator or plural owner operators have a goal like that that's very personal in wealth, it's okay to share with the company, even but not at the exclusion of the rest of the company. If you include the company in those goals, so
Mhm.
we're going to create an exit. We think it's going to be worth this. You don't have to do the math and tell them I want $4 million myself, but I want to create $100 million exit and I want every employee to participate in that. And we're going to do that through this mechanism,
Mhm.
uh, stock options, whatever it is. You don't even have to be specific to start with it. To start. But I do encourage you to be sincere about it. It shouldn't be something that you kind of take lightheartedly, or if that's the goal, then you should want them to be that committed to the goal and share in that. So don't build a planned exit and take 4 million, take a $4 million income, uh, or build an exit that gets you $100 million. It might mean you build an exit that creates $200 million. And frankly, you'll be more successful creating a $200 million exit and sharing 100 million of that with all your employees than you will trying to create one for 100 million yourself without their
Yeah,
involvement.
that makes big sense.
So align those incentives internally, share those goals, be open and really forthcoming about them, and then align all your employees with those goals as well.
Mhm. Mentoring is something that we're both deeply passionate about. You shared about how much it has shaped your own
Mhm.
experience. Can you share a little bit about what your experience has been getting into mentoring, becoming a mentor, why
Me
it's so important for you?
Yeah, we have talked about this. It
Mhm.
is something I really care a lot about, and in fact, shortly after our call today, I have a call with a mentee who is in an interview process, and I'm kind of helping to coach him through that. I'm gonna start selfishly first. When I look back on my career, I'm in my late 50s now, and when I look back on my career many years ago, I realized, gosh, I spent probably the first 10 to 20 years of my career figuring things out that everybody else had to figure out in their career too. And why do we keep making all the same mistakes? Why aren't we kind of helping each other out?
Yeah.
And so like it kind of developed from that, saying, kicking myself saying, gosh, I should have learned how to ask for help better. And it took me 10 to 15 years to learn how to ask for help
Mhm.
consistently, ask and know how to ask for help. So that kind of provoked me to start to get involved. First at CA years ago, I just went and asked a couple of people, like, is there a mentoring program? I'd love to help somebody out if they need it. And uh, because I believe with a little coaching and a little guidance, we could probably help other people avoid that 10 to 15-year learning curve. They could probably get through it in about 5 years. There's no excuse for us letting people make the mistakes that I made that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Uh, so selfishly, I wish I'd had that. So it became very easy to start to have those conversations when I figured out how to do it. The other reason for this is that, and I get a kick out of their success. I enjoy seeing other people be successful. That's why I enjoy leading teams, actually. I get more out of their success than I do my own. The last piece, and this is more to my personality, is I was a longtime athlete myself. I know that I gravitated towards team sports and not individual sports, and I coached. So, being a father of daughters and now a son too, I coached my daughters for a while, and I also coached club lacrosse, high school age teams for a long time. And I'll pat myself on the back for a moment. I sent over 150 players from high school club to play college lacrosse,
Yeah,
and
it's tremendous.
some of them, most of those on scholarships, some of them, many of them all Americans, a couple of Thornton nominees, that's the Heisman in lacrosse. And it's not because I'm a great coach. I'm probably average in the X's and O's, if that. But what I was really good at was helping people to set their own goals and goals that were meaningful to them, and then
Uh-huh.
hold accountable those goals, in their individual performance, but fostering a team atmosphere that could support everyone else in their own goals, their own development. That's what I really, really enjoy. That hit one. That kind of has colored, or certainly influences how I work with other people in the workforce now, and I love it. I absolutely love mentoring. Those are the reasons I think I'm well suited for it and why I think it's important. And the coaching I give people when they say, "How do I find a mentor?" I'm like, you go ask for one. You may not know who you want, you may not know what you need, but if you're a younger person in your career and you don't have a mentor at work, go find one. And it doesn't have to be somebody in your company. It doesn't have to be somebody in your line of business. It should be somebody out of your line of business, actually. There's a whole coaching structure in place where you have a manager to go to, and if I'm struggling with a proposal with a customer or a presentation or things like that, that's what my manager's for. They're supposed to be involved helping with that. But people who can give you that's coaching, right? Like I'll call that coaching. But mentoring is really more about coaching and not in your job, but in your career.
Mhm.
I'd encourage everybody to go find a mentor, whether your company has a formal program or not, doesn't matter. And then for people like us who've been in our jobs a long time, we should be going to our company saying, we don't have a mentoring program. How come? All right. I'd like to just connect with a recent hire or a younger sales rep or somebody in marketing or whatever it is you have an interest in. Go find somebody who could benefit from that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
set yourself up as a mentor.
Well, you're right. It starts with asking yourself. And I think what I also found in that is knowing, what do I need from this? Am I looking for someone to help
Mhm.
mentor me to move into a different role? Am I looking for mentorship because I'm in a really sticky situation and it's maybe not something I can talk to my boss about, but I'm
Mhm.
trying to look for some external guidance and support? So, whenever I had people, start to think about mentoring, I'd always want them to really be clear on, what are you looking for to get out of this to help shape who do you need to be for a mentor?
Mhm.
The other thing I always looked at was, it's okay to have multiple mentors, or a
Absolutely.
different cadence with
Yeah.
that. So,
Lethal.
for me, I would have maybe a monthly mentorship conversation. Then there was someone at a much senior level, and we were talking quarterly. And this
Or
was something that I would be evaluating and kind of reevaluating every year as my goals changed and the needs changed. And it's okay to move a monthly conversation to a quarterly conversation
sure.
or increase the frequency and
Mhm.
move those pieces. But I feel like sometimes I see people afraid to just start with the ask.
And that's what I struggled with early on, where I could have really used a mentor earlier in my career, and I didn't know what to ask for, and I also was afraid I would look weak. I'd look like I didn't know what I was doing. And now being a 59-year-old, I know, gosh, I should have absolutely asked for help. I could have moved so much faster through the things I needed to learn.
Mhm.
It's important. You just gotta set the ego aside a little bit if that's your hesitation, and go find somebody who can be be that sounding board and the guidance that you need. You're great at it. I've seen you do it with others, and you're great at leading teams, and you are great at building trust, and I think people who work with you pick up on that instantly. The other thing I would offer is, I've had teams where, the level of experience is very broad. You got people fairly new in their careers all the way to, very advanced and very experienced. And I encourage the earlier career people to find a mentor who's not me. They're one of my direct reports. And it just gives them a safe place to go talk to somebody if there's something they don't wanna talk to me about for whatever reason,
Mhm.
but it gives them a different perspective, and I know you're great at encouraging that kinda thing too. Have you run across some of those times when you've thought people really ought to have mentors that are not me to come to? They could be asking for guidance where
Mhm.
they're expecting me to tell them what they wanna hear.
First, I feel as a leader, I love when my team has mentors and I encourage it because it
Mhm,
means it's another voice of guidance. It's another perspective.
mhm,
There's going to be things that they either I don't have time for them to come ask me to, or it's maybe uncomfortable. They're thinking about moving into a different role. They don't want to have that conversation with me yet. So I think it's great to have other people who are helping to support your team when you're a leader. I also have seen as a leader a great benefit of almost like a reverse mentoring.
mhm,
So I had a team where I had a very tenured population who had been there for 15 to 30 years. And then I had the early talent side. And so something that was really beautiful was to do some pairing across that,
mhm,
because the early talent we're desperate to learn all of the mistakes that we have learned after a career in our jobs, and so eager to be a sponge to all of that.
mhm,
But equally, I needed that early talent to come with some new ideas for the people who had been here a long time and kind of be cross populating. So, still mentoring, but a little bit more like a buddy kind of relationship around how that cross pollination is happening. On what you shared, one of the great techniques that I have used when I'm looking for mentorship is to ask to take 30 minutes to pick someone's brain.
mhm,
I have never found that people say, no, I don't want to share about my expertise. They love the chance to talk about themselves. And in that, it's a great way to start to have a conversation to learn about what they could share with you Maybe you
Mhm.
walk away from it, you think, nope, this is not a fit. They are very ego driven. I don't think I'm going to learn anything from them, but it might also be a way for you to start to ask for that sponsorship of, would this
Yeah.
be something I'm going to continue? What are some of the ways that you see people raise their hand to ask?
It's funny, in the role I'm in now, we engage with a lot of companies that, they range in size from, a few $1,000,000 in revenue to 100 million or so, and sometimes bigger. But if there are teams in place that either the managers have too many direct reports, or maybe it's an open management role, and you talk to the teams underneath, the people who are in those roles that are maybe earlier in their careers, when you ask them about what they really need, what they feel like they need, and what they want, they almost always ask for, they may not use the word mentor, but they're asking for the kind of engagement, the kind of guidance that you would get from a mentor. They're not necessarily looking for a boss. They've got one already. They already understand that relationship. So I find that the early career folks probably already have a bit of a hunger and a thirst for this that is just ready to be met. So I've helped others where I've kind of hooked up mentors from outside even, and said, "Hey, I've got a mentor I think you'd really enjoy working with," and connected with them as somebody outside. It doesn't have to be somebody internally. It could be. And some companies are really good and mature having these programs already, and some have zero structure to it at all, and that's okay too. It's fine. The hard part for me early on was knowing how to ask for help, just to getting over that hump.
Hmm.
I do think that the generation of the workforce today that's younger probably is better at that than, certainly than I was, but better than most. So I think they're halfway there. Maybe they need a little nudge and they need a little opportunity to connect with people that could really help them.
So, when we think about that, I know when I first started to work with a mentor, and something that I now tell people as they embark on this is when you are asking for mentorship, you need to come to the table of this is what I would like to learn and kind of bringing that topic. And when I first started, I felt kind of uncomfortable about I don't know what to ask. Are there maybe some key topics or subjects that you suggest are helpful to start to have and that mentoring conversation, to build that relationship for that to become more comfortable and natural?
So that's a great question to ask, but I'm going to suggest there's a first question. And that
Great.
is, I'm a new mentee. I'm coming to you as a mentor. What should I be asking you? Help me understand how to take advantage of this relationship. And yeah, you need to come in. If you've got questions, you need to come in with your own questions too. But absolutely to ask that mentor, one of the reasons they're there is because of their experience. Ask them what they think they can convey. How can you actually help me? Not in a way that says, I don't believe you can help me, but in a help help
What's your
me help you
superpower?
help me, right?
Yeah. What do you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. And how do you, when you are, having that hat as a mentor on, how do you balance the giving guidance, asking questions, and letting them figure it out?
Yeah. A parent too, and you are too.
Or a coach?
So our tendency is your 5-year-old runs in the room and says, how do I do this? And we do it for them, right? Or if they're 10, we tell them what they should be doing. And there's that natural, knee jerk reaction we have that we want to tell people how to do things. And what we really should be doing is pausing and saying, how would you go about this yourself? How would you attack this? Or clearly you're conflicted. You might be thinking of a couple different ways to approach this. Tell me about what you're thinking. That's got to be the response as a mentor. It's got to be one who leads in guided discovery, not one
Mhm.
who gives them all the answers necessarily. Now, there are gonna be times you just give them answers, right? But you really stop and think about the topic you're discussing. Is there a way to help them to trust their own critical thinking and arrive at a solution? There may be more than one solution available, right? And more than one way to tackle it. But I find that's the part that I have to consciously focus on. Don't give 'em an answer, don't tell them what to do. And this call I mentioned I had later today, he's interviewing for a job, and he asked me about a week ago, "They're gonna offer me this job, should I take it?" And I had relayed to bite my tongue. I think you should, right? Should, based on everything I know about this guy, and I've known him for ages now. I think he should, but that shouldn't be why he shouldn't take it because I tell him to take it. He should discover why he thinks he should take it or not.
Well, I think that circles back to what you talked about when you were a coach, and the high performing athletes were the ones who really owned what the goal was. And it was you as a coach pushing them to have clarity on that versus saying your goal is X from a performance perspective. I mean, I think that's actually why I got certified in coaching, was
Mhm.
really thinking about how to ask questions that deep into value and
Yeah.
alignment and ownership of solutions.
That's a skill too, and I'm glad you touched on that. The asking the questions, how to build alignment, how to really, discover, that is a skill set that more people need to have. And you've gone through formal training about it. I think you naturally have a great talent for that as well. I think a lot is probably because you spend a lot of time in front of customers. People who do tend to learn how to ask questions to elicit responses and that kind of thing. One of the people I follow that there is a ton of content from him, Nick Saban, the retired coach from University of
Yeah.
Alabama. There is a ton of content from him. He's done corporate speeches for years, presentations in every setting you can possibly imagine. There are a ton of them out there on YouTube. Watch him because he does talk to you about this exact issue. I intuitively kind of forced my way into working with athletes that they had their own goals, both individually and as a team, and sometimes as position units and stuff. Years later, I saw a talk by Nick Saban that explained how he meets with every incoming football player and talks about their goals beyond football and education and life and post graduation and that kind of thing. And he had a formal system for it that he actively managed to through their whole careers. And I thought, that's what I really wanted to do. I never got that good at it, but my instincts were pretty good that I was going along those lines. So I'd encourage anybody who's interested in that kind of in mentoring in particular, go study Nick Saban like crazy. Watch everything you can from him. And there are others out there like him, but I would absolutely hone in on Nick Saban.
I put that sales discovery hat on when I'm
Mhm,
thinking about it as a leader, and I'm, asking questions. How do you think that went?
mhm.
What would you like to achieve from this?
Yeah.
To get them to articulate and start to move towards that common understanding.
Mhm.
I mean, you've highlighted on some of the misses and the mistakes of when this happens, not asking, not
Yeah.
having clear goals. What are some of the other misses, whether it's for individuals or organizations?
You know, um, Looking back on my career, there may be a couple of regrets. I am not really big into regrets, but I do find all the work done by Daniel Pink on regrets fascinating. I
Yes.
mean, you're a fan of his too. He's got this book, Regret, that talks about regrets really fall into, I think it's 4 categories, right? But the couple of places where I've regretted something have really been around not taking action when I knew I should. And one was not leaving a job early enough when I should have. It was a toxic environment. This is early on in my career. I should have known better. I should have trusted myself to do it, but I didn't. I was sticking to the Puritan work ethic of, I'm going to work my way through this, and I'm going to earn respect, and I'm going to this and that, and
I might
one
have been there before too.
yeah, and that just wasn't possible where I was. It was toxic. I should have moved on quickly from it, and I didn't. So live and learn. The other thing I'd say, and I don't regret this because I think I've stretched myself in the roles I've taken. I take a role, I will only take a role if I'm going to learn from it. I'll only take a client engagement if I'm going to learn from it. I'll only take a job with a company if I'm going to learn from it. It took me a long time to learn that, but when I decided consciously to do that, it was probably around the age of like 38 or 40. I decided I'll only take a role if I'm going to learn from it. It made me challenge myself to kind of evaluate, not only am I a good fit for this, can I do the job well, but it gave me kind of a guiding light while I'm in the role to go take on new things and so on, right? And it kind of drove me to make sure I capitalized on the opportunity that I saw there from the beginning. So that's kind of a bit of advice for individuals, I think. Companies, a lot of clients I work with, right? A lot of companies I work with, they come up with a great idea and a great solution. They engineer a great product, and then years later, they're still floundering. They can't figure out why they don't have a lot of customers or why it's not growing as fast as they thought it
Mhm.
should. And they've never really tackled the problem of, how do I get in front of customers? And it's a positioning and messaging problem. It is a targeting problem. When you talk about positioning is, do I really understand, or what is it that I do really, really well, better than almost everybody?
Mhm.
for a very clearly defined set of customers who care a whole lot about the problem I'm solving. And I steal that from April Dunford, who's the author wrote Obviously Awesome. I love that definition of positioning, because if you tackle everything from the perspective of positioning first, the rest makes a lot of sense. But a lot of these young companies or small companies skip way over this stuff. They think they just intuitively know their product fits in a certain spot, and they've really not thought through the positioning, the targeting, who does it really matter for, and then how do I monetize that? And to do that at scale, what do I need to be doing? And you tend to find when companies have not thought through each of those steps methodically, you find underinvestment. Now, underinvestment can be labor, it can be effort, it can be money, it can be everything, but underinvestment in the pieces that are so critical to making that successful. So part of our engagement process, in working with companies, is to pick that apart and start from the beginning. Always
Mhm.
begin with the end in mind. Those are the goals of the business, right?
Yeah, I have a colleague in marketing, and I think it's just fascinating of, like, how she's constantly asking the questions of being more and more narrow around who your target audience
Yes.
is and how that actually makes you more effective because it seems so counterintuitive because it seems like if I'm all everything for everyone, I have such a bigger customer base, but you're actually
I
way more effective when
Yeah.
you're focused, and I have to presume even when you think about it from a sales perspective, if you look at your territory, way more effective when you can really look at where can we be effective, where do we have real opportunity versus trying to spread yourself too thin and touch
Yeah.
everything.
That ever narrowing definition of your target is actually really important. And if you've ever read the books 10x is easier than 2x, it's really about constantly evaluating. I'm going to oversimplify this, but it's constantly evaluating where you get your highest return. So Pareto principle, 20% or 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. It's a constant reevaluation of where am I getting my results, double down on those, and then continually experiment on other things that are going to then catch fire and become growth, growth catalysts also. And the ones that aren't, jettison them, get rid of them. So in marketing, targeting is grossly overlooked. So your friend you're mentioning who goes this ever narrowing definition, and go back to what positioning is, it's doing, what defining what you do for a very well defined set of customers who care a lot about the problem you're solving for them. That just gets you increasingly narrowed on the problem as well. You find the right customers who have the right problem that you solve uniquely well, they'll pay money for it, and you won't wanna bother with the customers who don't wanna pay you as much for it.
As we think about your tenured career across sales and sales leadership, any other great kind of words of wisdom that you would share of if you were a mentor to someone in sales today, maybe they're struggling in their territory or trying to find the right places to focus, what would you be mentoring to them and
Oh,
suggesting?
never fail alone, right? In the way businesses work today, and particularly in tech, you've got resources, even in small companies, you have multiple resources that are there to help you. And that sounds a little trite to say that, but it's really, when you align the right people, from your solutions consultants, your salespeople, your marketing, and so on, and you leverage the power of the unit instead of just the individual. There's no reason to lose these deals on your own. Also, take a good hard look at where you're selling, and don't fool yourself on your target audience. You may have a sales rep, when you really challenge them on their pipeline, they're often clinging to some deals they probably shouldn't be clinging to because they don't really fit the ICP all that well. They just hope they're going to get some business out of it. They want the revenue, they're doing it for all the right reasons, except the one that says, where am I going to be most successful? Where can the company be most successful? Those are a bit of advice that I give just in terms of like deal management, pipeline management, and kind of, targeting and execution. At a bigger level, I'd say step back and think bold. And if you as an individual have a goal in mind, and you may not even be an owner of a business, you might be an employee. And if your goal is to one day start a company that does this and solves a problem, set a goal for it. Pick a date. This is what I'm gonna do it by, and then back up. What do I have to do between now and then to get there?
Mm.
And that could be within the role you're in. It could be going after another role within your company, or it could be starting another business, elsewhere. Whatever that goal is, begin with the end in mind, work backwards and figure out what it is you actually have to do to succeed at it.
Yeah, I
So
love it. I
well, but
actually ironically had a mentor early in my career who called that his, term for it was strategic futuring, of starting with that end vision and then how do you work back so you're building that strategic plan to make the future a reality, and if you've seen it,
yeah,
it happens.
we've all had that conversation, and we've all been on one side of this conversation, or on the wrong side of the conversation, where we said, "I always thought maybe I'd do this, or I always wanted to do this. I never did." And I'm going through that conversation with myself right now. I like to sail. I love to sail and ski. And I want to ski every continent every month of the year. And I've got one continent left. I've got South America in August. So I
Nice.
solve that problem. I don't want to sail around the world, but I do want to sail some oceans, right? And I'm sitting here saying, I need to make a plan now to do it. I can't. And so I've been working on this a bit here recently. It's not a matter of, gee, I hope in retirement I'll get to do this. I've got to set a goal, and it's probably going to be about 4 or 5 years from now where I'll start sailing oceans. And I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it, or with whom, or what. I might need a different boat to do it, but that's okay. But that's the only way it's going to happen. So it doesn't matter where you are in your career. Pick bold goals and challenge yourself. Don't pick easy ones, and then build a plan to get there, and figure out how to get people to help you. Get the right people around you who want to see you succeed and care about your success.
Mhm. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of building a map when we're thinking about closing a sales opportunity. What do we want?
Yeah,
How are we gonna get there? Who needs to be a part of it? What do we need to have
there's a
happen?
reason that structure works.
So, for those who are listening who might want to learn more about this,
Mhm.
become a mentor, take our mentorship themselves, or just kind of learn more to think about goal setting and being more intentional with their time, what would you suggest as resources, ways you learn yourself, or things that could be
Oh gosh,
valuable?
I gotta tell you, I don't think I'm actually all that great at managing goals. I think I'm adequate, right? I'm good. The more you can pour yourself into learning just nonstop, the better. And that could be an article here or there. One of the things I love about ChatGPT now, not for the answers, but it gives you a way to organize your research, right?
Hmm.
And I use OneNote for this. I've switched a lot of that over to ChatGPT, and it's not that I'm looking for ChatGPT to give me instructions, but I'm looking at a way where, as I collect articles, as I read books, I can put notes, I can link to the books and so on in there, and kind of collect some intelligence in one place around a topic. I may never use ChatGPT to create output from that at all, but I might. But it's a really interesting way to collect insights that you can later act on. So that it's kind of a deliberate approach to, I don't know what I'm going to do with the data, but this is a way I can collect it.
Hmm.
Worry about building indexes and a database and things like that. So I'd say study goal setting. If you're at a company that's got an LMS and good learning content, take advantage of it. If you don't, get on LinkedIn Learning. It sounds a little trite, but go join classes and go look at software vendors out there that do things like project management, things that are interesting to you, if those are the things you're interested in, and attend their webinars, find them recorded online. Like there's just an incredible amount of information available out there if you make the effort to look for it.
Hmm.
MIT now offers classes online for free. Go look at every one of those classes and figure out what's one I can take. Just the constant learning, and kind of embrace that, and know that something good's going to come of it. That's the piece I would really encourage.
No, I love that. I love that. I myself have been kind of balancing the corporate learning that you have to take. We've got a lot about AI now, obviously,
Yeah.
against, well, let me message that corporate speak. This is our go to market approach to this
For
against
me,
what is out there in LinkedIn and in podcast and other avenues. So it feels kind of more holistically of what I'm learning about with that. And you're right, Chat GPT is phenomenal. My favorite prompt is to, ask it something like, this is where my skill level is. I'm trying to put this mindset on, help create a crash course
yeah.
in learning X.
Mhm. I
So,
went with ChatGPT about a year ago. I've got a paid subscription to it, and I went in there a year ago, and I loaded up everything I could on my professional experience.
mhm.
And I put old resumes in there, new,
Disc
my
assessments.
resume,
Yeah.
all my disc assessments, put my LinkedIn profile in there, listed off books I read, just, tons and tons of stuff. And then I asked it to tell me what's wrong with me. And
That's a fun question.
use those words literally, but I said, "What's my biggest weakness?" I stated in their goals and things I want to
Mhm.
accomplish, and said, all right, what's holding me back? And I asked that question in many different ways, and I was actually kind of surprised at how reasonable the responses were. Um, it didn't sugarcoat it. It gave me critical feedback and so on. I just thought it was really interesting. There's a really interesting way to turn the question inside out and ask it instead of saying, "What am I well suited to do?" Which we constantly ask each other about that, right? But was really like, what would make a really poor fit for me in a role? Like, how do I spot a bad client before I work with them? Just
Mhm.
all sorts of questions like that. I asked it
What
100 different ways.
what an interesting way to ask for hard feedback that might be easier to hear from AI than a
Safe,
human.
isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I did it just because I got curious about it. I was curious what it would say. You could the other thing I like about it is you can ask it, instantly question after question and iterate on it, and it will go with you as long as you wanna go, right? And it'll tell you things that maybe, others that you talk to won't tell you readily.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I have a terrific friend as an executive coach. He's been doing it for 20 some years, and I worked with him at CA for years. He's one of the people I admire most in my career, and he gave me some really hard feedback one time, and he did it in a very sincere, caring way, saying, "This is where you're weak, and you've got to mitigate that." He's like, "I don't know if you realize it or not. You probably do realize it." And I did. It was a weakness that I felt I had. This is probably 10 years ago. And he said, you need to work on that before it ever comes up to haunt you or hurt you. And I took he's one of the few people that could give me feedback like that, and I wouldn't be defensive about it. And I still felt like, should I be defensive about this? And I thought, the guy cared enough to tell me. And it
Mhm.
was really helpful, really helpful. So I say that to also say, if you're in the mentoring seat, don't be afraid to give difficult feedback. I think people generally want to know, they want to know and they want to improve. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this with you.
You've shared tremendous insights finding what you love to do, making the decision that you're gonna take careers and make decisions based on what are you gonna learn from this.
Mm,
Any final advice?
have fun. Only work with people you enjoy. And I said earlier that I would only consider a role or an engagement with a client or something where I felt I would learn something from it.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, life's too short to work with people that you would call a-holes. We've all been there, we've all had them, and you're gonna have them no matter what, but if you see it, avoid it. It's just not worth it. Also, just have fun and realize that if you focus a little bit on other people's success while you're in whatever role you're in, it's gonna pay you back. It's
Uh-huh.
gonna help them be successful, you're gonna feel good about it, and you're gonna get paybacks. It's gonna come back to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Will. I've loved the conversation
Okay.
and appreciate all of the insights.
Yeah, great to be with you. Thanks.
Absolutely.